Okay, we have just began the letter Hey last week, so this is part 2 of Hey, and we're talking about the name at this point. The name Hey means look or behold. As a human figure with uplifted arms, Hey reminds us of our posture before the Almighty, humble, receptive, and open. Like Hay, we lift our eyes to heaven, attentive to hear his voice and to see his revelation. Humility is the perfect posture for us to receive God's blessing. The letter Hay reminds us that when we are humble, receptive, and open, that we are in the perfect position, ready for God to bless us. So the letter Hey prepares us for the blessings to come. A blessing is a public declaration of God's approval and a source of power for prosperity and success. A blessing is also related to God's purpose, God's promises, and a word for his people. Blessing can be material or spiritual, and they have to do with God's kingdom. God's blessings come in different forms. Another of the definitions of blessing is God's approval or God's wishes. Also, God's favor and protection. When I think of examples of pleasing God, seeking God's approval, there's none greater than Abram. So one of the purposes of the letter He is to prepare us to receive God's blessing. And his blessings come in several different ways, but they come because he is pleased. And when I think of examples of pleasing God, seeking God's approval, there is none greater than Abram. Abram is the beginning of all things God. God called Abram. In Genesis 12:1, now the Lord had said unto Abram, get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred and from thy father's house unto a land that I will show thee. And then down in verse 4, so Abram departed as the Lord had spoken unto him, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran. So God called Abram. We don't know if this is the first time God has called someone. If it isn't, then whoever he called before didn't answer the call, didn't obey God. But we know that Abram did obey God. He did what God told him to do. He left his home and went to the land that God would show him. And it says he was 75 years old when he left out of Haran. God gives his blessing to those who believe and to those who obey. This verse shows Abram's obedience. Verse 4 says that he left the city of Haran. Haran means parched in Hebrew. So he left the parched land to go to the promised land. Genesis 12:5. And Abram took Sarai, his wife, and Lot, his brother's son, and all their substance that they had gathered, and the souls that they had gotten in Haran, and they went forth to go to the land of Canaan, and unto the land of Canaan they came. Verse 5 says they took all their substance, everything they had, went with them. This means they were not coming back. This shows that they were committed to obeying God's call. The scripture says they went forth into the land of Canaan. The term Canaan, if you break it down, is Ken-a-an, with the emphasis on the final syllable. Canaan comes from the name of the fourth son of Ham, who was the youngest son of Noah. For some unknown reason, and I don't know if Mike's not here to respond to this, but Michael might know. For some unknown reason, Canaan was blamed for his father Ham seeing Noah naked. Noah placed a curse on Canaan. Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren. That's Genesis 9:25. And this curse fell also upon the land. We don't know why Abraham cursed Canaan, because it was Ham that went in and saw him naked. And the implication here is that Ham came out after seeing his father naked and made some kind of joke, which showed disrespect for his father. That was the whole gist of that. Is that making sense?
Yeah, there's
Go ahead.
yeah, young years, but there's numerous interpretations of what happened between Ham and Noah. But yeah, at least that, if not more.
But for some
I
reason,
don't know why he cursed Canaan.
Abraham cursed Canaan instead of Ham. He should have cursed
I
Ham.
never noticed that. Yeah, maybe only because he's the offspring of Ham, possibly, and he knew that maybe that seed was going to.
Well, that's possible.
That
That's
Canaan was
possible.
the offspring of Ham,
Yeah,
and then
Ham was the father
Yeah.
of Canaan, but
And he was going to be,
okay.
his name was going to go on the land as well.
Maybe Ham was the one that made the joke or disrespected.
It probably was Ham, but
No.
what you mean Canaan?
No, Ham.
you know, Ham
Yeah,
went in.
Yeah, I believe Ham did, but we don't know. And that, again, that's up for interpretation. The Bible doesn't make that clear.
Yeah.
We just know that there was a curse placed on the land. His inheritance was the choice property that later would be known as the Promised Land. Even though the land was settled by many pagan tribes, it was God's chosen land, which was reserved for his people. So when Abram obeyed God, Abram's obedience pleased God. James 2:23. And the scripture was fulfilled, which saith, Abraham believed God, and he was called the friend of God. And Genesis 15:6. And he believed in the Lord, and he counted it to him for righteousness. When Abram obeyed God, the blessing was his. Genesis 12, verse 7. And the Lord appeared unto Abram and said, Unto thy seed will I give this land. And there builded he an altar unto the Lord, who appeared unto him. So here again, Abram is being obedient and pleasing the Lord by building an altar. Now the name of the Lord is Yahweh, Yod He Vav He. If you haven't noticed by now, it's in red at the very top of the blackboard, indelibly and permanently etched on our blackboard. Thank God we put it in red, but it's very important. It is the name, the holy name of God. And in that you will see two Ches, two of the letter Ches. Now Abram's name was spelled Aleph, Bet, Dalet, Mem. I'm sorry, Aleph, Bet, Resh, Mem. I get that confused sometimes when I read too fast. The race is very important here. God chose to show Abram how much he loved him by changing Abram's name. But it's how he changed it that proved his love. This is really interesting. I hope you can grasp this. Now, I've got some handouts for you here in a moment. In Genesis 17:5, God is speaking. Neither shall thy name any more be called Abram, but thy name shall be Abraham, for a father of many nations have I made thee. Abram means high father, yet Abram was 75 years old and fatherless. God changed his name to Abraham, meaning father of many, and yet he still had no children. But God had a purpose for the name change. When God changed Abram's name, he did it by adding one of the Heys, I should say. So if you, maybe we ought to go ahead and hand this out. Boy, you're really on the ball this morning, buddy. Thank you. If you see on this paper, you'll see on the left-hand side is the name Abram, the four-letter Hebrew name of Abram, and then a plus sign and a He equals Abraham. Okay? Now, if you break this down into numerical values, and I'm jumping the gun on numerical value because we're not ready for it yet, but this is the right place for this. So if you break this down into the numerical value of each letter, you'll see that one, or Aleph is 1, Beit is 2, Resh equals 200, and Mem equals 40, for a total of 243, plus the He equals is 5, which equals 248. The numerical value of the name of Abraham has two specific meanings. Number one, if we presume that the letter Mem has a value of 40, as I just stated, then Abraham means 248, which means the truth of God's word for the children of promise in the face of trial, probation, chastisement, ending in a new birth and a new beginning. This is basically the story of the Jewish people from that time forward. This is what they experienced. Now, number two, the second possible meaning, if we take the numerical value of Mem Sophit, which, without getting too far ahead of myself, this letter Mem that you see at the end of the word is a Sophit letter. It has a different, has the same meaning, but it comes only at the end of a word, and it has a different numerical value. So if we take the numerical value of the Mem Sophit, then that is 600. So we add 600 to the 248.
That's right.
No, 600 to now I'm confusing myself. Because when you add this up, it doesn't come to 248, it comes to 808. Let me add it again, make sure I'm doing that right.
848, you mean?
No, 800, 5, 2, and 1, 808. So what if I do wrong here? I'm sorry.
I can help with the math.
Yeah, please do. 200
If you're going to be adding 600, it's going to be
plus
848.
40 is 240.
I've got a calculator.
3. No, 2. No, I'm right. I just don't know why.
That's right.
That's right. Okay. Anyway, scratch all that. 608 is what we're talking about.
All that.
See, that's right, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, my little calculator.
Yes.
So anyway,
You wear many hats.
with the Memso being 600, it adds up to 808. 808 is the Good Shepherd, the new beginning, the new birth for God's election of grace to the children of the promise. This is Abraham's new name, which led him to be the father of many nations. Either way, God is displaying, whether it's first or second value, either way, God is displaying his purpose in renaming Abram. I've already said that a blessing is part of God's purpose. He chooses to bless those who love and obey him. The letter He is an action word. It means look. It means behold. It means revelation. It is a descriptive word. It is a picture of an open window. So these are all meanings of the letter He. It is also a verbal word. When you speak the letter He, you automatically expel breath along with the letter. The Jews pronounce the letter He as though they're clearing their throat. He. In English, we would just say hey, but that sounds too much like something Gomer Pyle would say. Hey! Okay, that went over like a lead balloon.
Hebrew is in English, but still Hebrew. I don't know.
So it is impossible to pronounce the letter He while inhaling. You're exhaling when you say it. Therefore, one imparts something of oneself when invoking the letter. The letter He represents the divine breath of God. So when God changed Abram's name to Abraham, he breathed the breath of God into the name. He imparted some of himself into Abram with the letter. We know that, yeah, okay.
Okay, so speaking of breath of God, God's name is Yahweh, and when you breathe, doesn't it sound like Yahweh?
Yeah.
Yahweh.
In and out. Yeah.
Yahweh, yeah.
In and
Yeah.
out. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's good.
When you yawn.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
And when you yawn. Yeah.
So even if people don't think they say God's name, they still do. They breathe it.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, when we know that when God created man, it says he breathed into man the breath of life, and he became a living soul. So when he breathed into Adam, he created a living soul. Here he is breathing the name into Abraham. Abraham was thus blessed by God and was truly a child of God. So he not only breathed his name into Abram, but he breathed part of himself into Abram that gave him, he's already obeying God, but now he has a part of God living inside of him. Up to now, he's simply been a follower of God, but now he has the living Spirit of God living inside of him. Yeah.
That just made me think, I mean, if God breathed into the dust of the earth, he put his hey, he put one of the letters of the holy name of God in us, and we became a living soul. Man, that's good.
Isn't that
That's just
good?
one letter of his name.
One letter. Just one
That's
letter.
great.
That's neat.
Adonai, the Holy One, breathed one of the two Heys from his own name into the name of Abram. Not only that, but he placed it as the fifth letter of the name. Now, the fifth letter of the alphabet is also the fifth letter of the name of Abraham, the Hey. God is saying, behold, this is my servant Abraham. This is a revelation of my love for him. Even more than that, this was the fifth divine encounter with Yahweh God. The first was in Genesis. I'm just going to read these very roughly. Genesis 12:1, Abram is called by God. In verse 7, God promised the land to Abram's descendants. Chapter 13, verse 14, God showed Abram the land he was to be given. In Genesis 15:1, God tells Abram he is the shield and his exceeding great reward. In Genesis 17:1, God tells Abram, walk before me and be thou perfect. And then in Genesis 17, verse 5, God changes Abram's name to Abraham. So this is the fifth encounter that Abram has had with God. Abram is now 99 years of age, and his name is still Abram until this encounter. 99 is the perfect spiritual order through redemption, which brings the promises of God. He was 99 when his name was changed by the Shekinah glory of God. Abram is mentioned in the Bible 53 times. 53 means the faithful witness. So you see, you have all of these clues that God is giving to Abraham. Why do we call Abraham the father he's the father of Judaism, he's the father of Christianity, he's the father of many nations, but he is the father because God has called him and appointed him and given him all this proof. All of these things are proof as to who Abraham was. And he was, I say anyway, he was the first to recognize who God was, to honor God, and to obey God. Okay? Whether there were any others that God approached before, I doubt it, because God knew who he was choosing. Okay, not funny today, I'll move on.
Can I mention something real quick?
Please do.
Please, thank you.
Dig me out of this hole.
Well, you commented Genesis 17:1, Abraham 99, and the Lord said, walk before me and be thou perfect. And in verse 2, he said, I will make my covenant. And that's the Hebrew word berith. Is that correct? Berith. And my covenant will be between me and thee, and I will multiply thee exceedingly. Abraham fell on his face, and God talked with him, saying, as for me, God says, behold, my covenant, my berith, is with thee, and thou shalt be a father of many nations. So he said, behold.
Behold.
Hey.
Oh.
Hey, behold.
Hey. That's awesome. Yeah. Very, very good.
Now, curious though, I'm just curious. Is Israel part of that berith?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So that was where Abraham said that is where Israel is, or is that like
It's an Abrahamic covenant.
right?
Okay. There are other covenants that followed, we'll talk about later on down the line, but it was an Abrahamic covenant.
Right.
Now, Abraham is the father of the Jewish nation, among others. But he is the father of Isaac, who's the father of Jacob, who was the father of the 12 sons, the 12 tribes, but Jacob is the next one that God changes the name from Jacob to Israel.
Okay.
So the covenant of Abraham falls on the Israelites. Okay, and then as I said later on, I think there's like either five or seven covenants that follow, but they all are branches of the Abrahamic covenant.
One other thing on that, the word Brit, which is the covenant, the Jews, the Messianic Jews, call the New Testament Brit Hadashah,
Yeah.
which is the new covenant
Yeah.
of God.
Yeah.
So they use the same word that God
Yeah.
used to Abraham.
That's true.
To show it's the same God.
Say it again, breathe,
Brit. It's just
and
Brit.
then breathe.
Very-
Some people say breathe with the TA.
But what do the Jews say? Just say breathe Hamashah, breathe,
Hada with a D.
Hadashah.
breathe Hadash.
And that means new. So like New Jerusalem is
Oh.
Jerusalem, Hadashah.
But that Bereith with the H on it, it's got the hay in it.
Yeah.
Bereith.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, it's the same
Hadashah.
with Bereshith. Some people say sheath instead of sheet.
Yeah.
Depends on how you want to pronounce it.
When you see
Cool.
a Hebrew word
Yeah.
with an HA at the beginning, that refers to the Hadashah, the covenant.
Sorry.
Uh,
You just triggered
It's,
something else. So we've always talked about the hey in the beginning, which is right, definite article. There's another grammatical form of the hey that I just thought of when you were teaching today. And it is, it's really hard to express in English, but like when we read, and he went to the land of so-and-so, sometimes that's one Hebrew word, which is just the name of the place and then a hey at the end.
Oh,
And what it
okay.
means is the hey individually means that they went that direction. They went Evansville-ward, if you would. It would be Evansville hey in Hebrew.
Okay.
And so the hey carries a to go, like leave one place and go to another. And that goes right along with Abraham's journey too.
Perfect. How
There's so
perfect.
many hays in this story. It's,
Yeah.
it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's just another indication of
Yeah.
God's blessing
Yeah.
and God's promises to Abraham.
I just wanted to mention, and today, in modern times now, we have the Abrahamic Accord
Mm-hmm.
that Trump brought about with a lot of negotiations with other Arab nations just a couple of years ago, whenever he was in, and that came to fruition in this latest Iran attack on Israel, because Jordan and Saudi Arabia, which ordinarily would be against Israel, stood with Israel this time and knocked out, they not all with Israel, they knocked out 99% of those drones
Yeah.
that were coming in toward Israel.
Yeah.
And they said on the news, this was because Trump's Abraham Accord, that would have never happened. And now the whole Arab world is beginning to see, they're changing how they think toward Israel, that they need to be in accord with Israel, because these people who are radical people like Hamas couldn't come against them too, you know. They make no sense.
And what does the Abraham Accord, what is it?
It's,
It's a-
well, we
it's a-
stand together.
It's a covenant.
Yeah,
It's a covenant.
yeah, and believe it or not, they stood by that. I'm so surprised with Saudi Arabia and
Because
Jordan doing that.
because it's a covenant.
They honored it.
In the Islamic world, as well as in the Jewish world, a covenant is a sacred thing. And so, because they look at it as a covenant, that's why they adhered to it. There's other reasons too. There are economic reasons and political reasons, but they stuck their neck out, and where they're going to be threatened by Iran too, because they went against them. They went with Israel.
But the Lord's, going back. Blessing, I will bless you.
Yeah.
You
Yes,
bless. And you
yes,
curse, I will
yes.
curse you.
Absolutely.
God is going to, and it's the Sunni Muslims that
Yeah.
are with Israel.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
And all those young people, those students that are writing for Hamas and saying all the horrible things, death to America and all that. I mean, they don't understand. They're not Christian. They don't understand that they're sending themselves straight to hell. You know, it's so sad that they are siding with the people who are cursing Israel.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I see it.
Thanks, Mark.
there's a lot going on.
I'm just trying to find my place again.
Yeah.
So Abram was 75 years old when he began his journey to Canaan. When God changed his name, Abram had been serving the Lord for 24 years. So he was 75 when God called him. Now he's 99, so that's 24 years later. 75 signifies missionaries and perfect spiritual order in the light of grace. Abram left his country and sojourned into a strange land at the calling of the Lord. To me, this is the perfect definition of missionary. 24, the number of years that he had served the Lord, represents the priesthood, heavenly government, redemption, and expectations by the creative works of God. Abraham was the father of the priesthood. His descendants, the Levites, were the priests who proclaimed the need for redemption, accomplished by the creative works of God. Okay, so the numbers add up to what actually occurred. Abraham served the Lord for the 24 years, which would later become symbolic of the 24 courses of priests who served in the temple in Jerusalem, suggesting a structured order in God's plan. The number 24 is often associated with completeness and wholeness. So the number 24 is significant. And there's one more. This is seen with the 24 elders who surround the throne of God in the book of Revelation, expressing the entirety of God's chosen people. So the 24 elders represent basically 2 from each of the 12 tribes, and they are casting their crowns before the Lord.
Verse 12 of 17 says, describes 8 days shall be circumcised. That's 12th verse. 24th verse says, and Abraham was 99 years old when he was circumcised in his flesh.
Yeah.
Verse 24.
Yeah, changing his name was a little painful.
Yeah.
99. Okay. When God changed Abram's name to Abraham, he also changed Sarai's name to Sarah. God breathed the second hay from his own name into the name of Sarai to give her a part of himself, just as he had to Abraham. I'm deliberately pronouncing these names differently so that it makes sense, because Sarai doesn't make any sense in English. Sarai was her name, and God says it in Genesis 17:15. And God said unto Abraham, for Sarai thy wife thou shalt not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall her name be. Sarai means contentious, quarrelsome, or my princess. Now that makes you wonder. We don't know what Sarah's, we don't know anything about her before all this. She might have been a handful for Abraham,
Yeah,
you
that
know?
makes sense for my little niece.
And what was it? She laughed.
Yeah, she laughed.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Oh, she laughed.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's part of it. Contentious, quarrelsome, or my princess. Now this is interesting. Sarai was Abram's princess. When you spell her name out And I think I do on the next page. You ready?
Yeah, just,
Oh, we're about done. Well, we got time for this anyway. Just one.
We're going this now.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Mix them up, buddy, mix them up.
I'm taking.
Okay, when you look at Sarai's name spelled in Hebrew, it ends in the letter Yod. The Yod at the last, as the last letter of her name, as a suffix, denotes possession. Thus, Sarai was by name Abram's princess. Her new name was an elevation or a promotion for Sarai. Sarah means a princess, a noble lady, or to lead to fight. Now here, the word princess is in a different context. In Sarai, princess is considered to be somebody haughty, or what's the word they use all the time? Oh, well, I can't think of it now, but I'll think of it at lunch. The word for somebody who thinks too much of themselves.
Pride, conceited. Pride,
No,
conceited.
no, it's a.
Narcissist.
There you go. There you go. That's the word.
Saraiish when I said it.
That's right. I like that.
Just a little bit. there.
Narcissist. Yeah,
That
that's
makes
the word I'm trying to think
$1,000.
of.
Yeah.
She was kind of a narcissist, and she was quarrelsome, and she thought she was pretty hot stuff. But now she has become a princess, a noble lady, and she is become the princess of God. Now that's a whole totally different
Wow.
terminology for princess. So Sarai, and you'll see on that chart that goes around, Sarai on the left plus He equals Sarah. Okay, and again, if you add up the numbers, Sarai comes out to 510, which means grace through God's election by grace, election of grace by the law. Now that's different than 505. You notice that when he added his letter to her name, the value goes down, the numerical value goes down from 510 to 505. It's because the Vav has a value of 10 and the He is a value of 5, but 5 is grace. And
Yeah.
and 10 represents the law. So you see the difference?
Wow.
So Sarah 505 is grace through God's election of grace and God's goodness. So you have the goodness of God through grace, whereas Sarai is grace by the law. Isn't that good? I mean, God gives us so much to be happy about. Okay, that is time to change. We'll stop here and pick up right there next time.
That's so deep, Dave. Because if you think about it, God, they had those names before this ever happened.
Yeah,
And God had orchestrated it before the beginning of time.
yeah,
That his name was going to be part of their names. And it was going to change their destiny. It was going to go right along with the scripture.
And give us that DNA.
He knew
Yeah.
all of that
Yes.
ahead of time.
Yes.
It just blows me
yes.
away.
It does.
Well,
It
what
does.
the law could not do, and that was weak to the flesh.
Yes, yes,
Yes.
yes.
And the Bible says that we are grafted in to that
Yes.
very same. We're not of the blood per se, but we are grafted into the vine, which is Jesus through Abraham.
Which that pain and that grafting allows the flow of the blood, of the
Oh, it
unity
does.
of it, and to become one.
It
and
does.
The DNA, you know?
Yeah, when you graft a branch into a
Yes.
vine,
Yes.
you allow the source of life in that vine into that branch.
Yes.
And that's what's happened to us.
Into the root.
Yes. Okay.
Contrary to nature, we were grafted in.
Contrary to our nature,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Well, yes, that's true, but it's contrary to the way God first intention that he come to his own, and his own received him not. So we have